We've got a fantastic coup here. We've got Harry Eccles from the RCN and Dr Bob Gill on the Zoom. We can't be there on Sunday together because of just practicalities, but we've got this ballot result that just come out today. And Harry, we spoke to you before, and you were not keen on the pay deal that was being offered. Looks like Unison have accepted that deal. This is from the Unison website. Decisive outcome as Unison members vote to accept NHS pay offer in England. Almost 3/4 of health members voted to accept the offer, with over 150,000 having their say. It says it's a record turnout. That was Unison, but then we just heard very recently. This is on the RCN website. RCN members vote to reject NHS pay offer for nursing staff in England. We're seeking an urgent reopening of pay talks with the UK government and planning a new 48-hour strike from 8 p.m. on the 30th of April without derogations. The result of the RCN's consultation on revised NHS pay offer for nursing staff in England have been announced. 61% of eligible members voted, 46% voted to accept the offer, 54% voted to reject the offer. Harry, you were campaigning to reject the offer, and you've won that vote by quite a slim margin, but you've won. And considering that the RCN was asking you to accept it, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, certainly it was an uphill battle when you've got a union recommending accept, and I just think it goes to show the strength of feeling from nurses on the floor. I think it goes to show the strength of feeling from NHS workers who are standing up for themselves and finding their voice to fight for their profession and for their patients. So although none of us want to be in this situation, and we would all like the government to just realise that and do their duty and pay us properly and start addressing the issues in the NHS, I think it is inspiring to see the members speaking up so loudly. So yeah, that's a really good result.
I mean, the Unison result is not so helpful to you, but do you think that's a problem, that if Unison don't go along with the RCN?
Well, I mean, there's lots of difficulties in kind of the next steps. Different unions hold different kind of weights depending on their size. I think one of the biggest things that led to people accepting this deal, and Unison covers a broad MDT, is the fact that NHS workers are desperate, and this lump sum will mean a lot to people. Although it's short-lived and it's not a long-term solution, I think the government have taken advantage of the fact that people are desperate. I do not think it is a statement saying we think this is a fair deal. I think it's saying we need this now. However, the RCN have been really, really clear, as you've just highlighted, Crispin, on what our next steps are. And I think they've come out strong with that full 48-hour strike without derogation, which is where we were going to be before we paused and entered the talks, and also reballoting all trusts England-wide to get a further strike mandate. So that's a really, really strong statement there.
And so the deal they have to come up with next will have to be better than that one. Do you think that might actually have an influence on what happens with Unison as well? I mean, that their members will be thinking, why are we taking this? It might cause an upsurge in other unions, do you think?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we've still got, I think, another 9 health unions out balloting at the moment. Their ballots run a bit longer. So I'm really hoping people will watch this and go, we want to be with the RCN. And that will kind of bulk out, because this is a battle for the NHS as a whole. So it's really, really important that we kind of do coordinate and work together. And I think it's a really good example for many trade union members in many sectors, but particularly the NHS, to see, look, wow, people have spoken up and the fight continues. And obviously that is a fight for all people on Agenda for Change, whatever union they are in. That is the battle we're fighting at the moment.
And your campaign is across unions, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. We're kind of cross-union, cross-band, cross-disciplinary, NHS workers, all frontline clinical staff who believe that fair pay is needed for public sector workers, for NHS workers, and that is essential to keeping the NHS as it should be, publicly owned and providing high-quality care free for people who need it. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that at present because we just simply don't have the staff or the funds. So that's why this is super important, and that's why it's amazing that this stand has been made. And I think it's going to be really important to remember that for the next steps of the battle, because there's going to be a lot more to come. Yeah.
Dr Bob Gill, what's your response to that vote from the RCN members? Do you think that's really significant for health unions as a whole?
I'm pleased that they've rejected it. I was disappointed that the RCN even put the pathetic offer to their members, because let's not forget, asking them to accept a 5% deal is accepting that the wage theft that they've suffered over the last decade of 20 to 30%, well, they're still in a loss. So they're not getting out of the hole that the medical profession and nursing profession have been paying to bail out the banks. That's what that's the situation we're in, is through deliberate austerity and wage suppression. And all we're asking for, particularly the BMA, is restore our pay to the same value it would have been in 2008. That is not going to happen with the RCN offer. I would go further and say, you know, the RCN members need to ask themselves, why are the leaders putting such a pathetic offer on the table? You know, and you know, as Harry said, let's hope that this gives encouragement to the grassroots to get more involved and ask serious questions of their leadership. You know, if you look in the press at the moment, they're attacking the BMA Junior Doctor Committee leaders personally. You've got Daily Mail hit pieces, Daily Telegraph hit pieces. On the media, they're casting aspersions on individuals. Well, I don't think the RCN have suffered any of that. And that is because they have been easier to turn over, I'm afraid. The leadership have been too compliant and falling for Stephen Barclay's kind words. But the offer, the money isn't on the table.
Do you think with this particular RCN result that this could change the whole nature of unions thinking they can push for deals that the members just won't accept? I mean, it seems quite Unison have done that, but do you think this might be a bloody nose for those union leaders?
I hope so, yes, because you know, most of us as individuals, we rely on our representatives. The unions have enormous power, and presenting a very poor offer very early on and suspending strikes is a weak signal. It's a weak signal to members to say, your union's pretty pathetic. Maybe this is the best deal you're going to get. And some of the messaging from the unions was exactly that, accept this deal because we're not sure how much better we can make it. That is not fighting talk. We need fighting talk because the request from the staff is entirely reasonable. Look, the MPs have managed to sustain their wages. They haven't suffered a real terms loss. The bankers have restored their bonuses. There's plenty of money to give away in PPE contracts and get us to subsidize the profits of the energy companies. You know, as Harry said, the Unison members, the people who have accepted, have taken a pragmatic decision. Do we continue to go into further and further debt, or do we get some money in the pockets now? And their unions have relied on their very weak position to encourage their members to accept a very bad deal. And I'm very disappointed. This is not what unions were set up to do. They were set up to represent the workers and not cozy up to the employer. And that seems to be what's happening with the Unison, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from outside as not someone within one of the unions, I have to say that the media has been relentless in its attacks on unions and any idea that people get a reasonable offer. That hasn't been helped also by Keir Starmer coming out and speaking against pay deals that are, like you say, bringing wages back into what they should have been originally. I'm just going to play you a clip of Keir Starmer in a sweet shop for some reason. But anyway, here he is.
I don't think 35% is affordable, but I do think that the role of government is to get in the room, around the table, and to negotiate a settlement. And for very many people whose operations are going to be cancelled, that's exactly what they want the government to do. So yes, I think 35% is unaffordable, but that's not an excuse to sit on your hands and do nothing. That's a reason to get in the room and negotiate, and that's what the government should be doing.
Well, he's certainly not sitting on his hand. He's made a clear statement. 35% is not affordable. He said it twice. What I mean, how on earth can how can you get any representation if you've got no one? If no one's in Parliament speaking up for you, and no one in the media is supporting you, it's a very difficult space to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, Starmer's position is economic illiteracy. Any pay rise that goes into the public sector, particularly the more poorly paid, that all returns into the economy. It doesn't go offshore. If you give a tax cut to the super rich, that money leaves the country. Money given in wage increases to NHS staff stays within the economy, in fact, gives an economic boost to the country, and you pull most of that back through taxation and through spending. So he's economically illiterate. He doesn't talk about the money that's been squandered by this government. We're talking tens of billions wasted in the pandemic response, 37 billion alone in the test and trace fiasco. So, you know, we can afford to send money to Ukraine. We can afford to give dodgy deals to MPs and their associates, but we can't afford to pay for a health service. Well, is Keir Starmer saying he wants to continue to see 500 excess deaths per week? Is that what he's saying? Is he saying we can afford to have a growing number of people languishing on waiting lists who are should be economically active and working and paying taxes? Is he happy for 200,000 to 300,000 people out of the workforce? How is that economically literate? He's talking utter nonsense. He's trying to out-Tory the Tories. And I'm afraid, you know, as a leader of the Labour Party, he's totally pathetic.
How do you see Keir Starmer's response, Harry?
Well, I mean, it's sad, isn't it, when you hear the media, the government, the opposition, and sadly, like you mentioned, some of the unions kind of agreeing that giving public sector workers a pay rise is unreasonable. It's very, very sad. And I think it's really important. I think that's why the strength of the rank and file grassroots members standing up for themselves is so important, and getting that truthful narrative out there, fighting that media narrative of explaining why it is reasonable, and not only why it's reasonable, why it's necessary, because the simple truth is without staff, there is no healthcare. And this narrative of Keir Starmer said that their operations being cancelled. I mean, I'm sorry, one of my relatives' operation was cancelled 4 times. Nothing to do with strikes. It was short staffing. Clinics and operations are being cancelled on a daily basis because we simply don't have the people to do it. And that is exactly why we're striking. And this narrative of people are dying because nurses and doctors are striking, it is awful, and it's disingenuous, because we're striking because people are dying. That is exactly why we're doing it. You know, the reason that we're so motivated and passionate is because we believe in a free healthcare system. Look, if the healthcare goes private, I've got a job. I could maybe even make more money, but that's not the point. The principle is we are so passionate about providing that care that works for the public. And I think that's so important to protect. And we need opposition to be opposing. That would be obviously the dream there. But I think that the really important thing is, in spite of all of this, we have had this result from the RCN. I think for me, that is the encouragement that people are making a stand, people are finding their voice. And if that voice, like you said, Dr. Bob, doesn't come from the opposition or the places we expect it, I think we're now finding it in the rank and file movements of frontline workers, which I think is quite inspirational.